Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This afternoon in the House of Assembly, we will debate a significant piece of legislation in our province, namely the Residential Tenancies Act. Throughout Newfoundland and Labrador, in every region of our province, many individuals and families are considered tenants or landlords. We know that the relationship between landlords and tenants is often a complex one. Time and time again, we have heard the public discussion on the rights of both tenants and landlords. I think it's important to emphasize that most landlords and tenants throughout Newfoundland and Labrador are law-abiding, well-meaning individuals. And that is why there is a need to ensure that the rights of landlords and tenants are protected through the Act. The current Act was proclaimed in 2000, and for a number of years, landlords, tenants, and other interested parties have been continuously asking for changes to residential tenancy legislation. It became apparent that the Act contains a number of unclear sections that are not easily interpreted and require clarity and modernization. In 2012, consultations and a jurisdictional scan were conducted to determine best practices in our provinces. A series of public consultations were also held across the province. A consultation discussion document was issued, feedback was gathered, and a summary What We Heard document was also developed. However, no changes to the Act were ever brought to the House of Assembly. Since 2012, there have been continued demands from stakeholders to amend the Act. So, in 2016, our government committed to a review of the Residential Tenancies Act, and it was also reflected in my 2017 mandate letter from the Premier. We recognize that market conditions and financial considerations today have changed drastically since 2012. Our objective is to update the legislation in a way that is responsive to everyone's needs and reflective of the current environment. We have identified several areas that merit significant amendments, including clarification of the Act's language to ensure it is modern and clear. I would also like to acknowledge the feedback we have received from a number of individuals and groups, such as Stella Burry's Not Covered report, the St. John's Board of Trade Landlords Committee, the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labour, and a Facebook group established by Mr. Sherwin Flight that has over 8,500 members. The valuable feedback we received is a necessary part of the process, and I want to thank all those who provided input to help arrive at the amendments we are bringing forward today. A very important part of the process was trying to find a balance between the competing needs of landlords and tenants, and developing a modern and clear regulatory framework to govern the rights and obligations of both parties. We feel that we have achieved this goal. I'd like to highlight a number of changes to the Act that we will debate this afternoon. I'm very pleased that one of the amendments we are introducing today will help address the issue of domestic violence. It is an unfortunate reality of our society that many individuals are victims of domestic violence. Within the current Act, there are no provisions that provide for early termination of a rental agreement in situations of family violence. The changes we are proposing today will provide for early termination of fixed-term rental agreements without penalty by providing a 30-day notice in these situations. A second amendment I would like to highlight is the inclusion of boarding houses, which are not covered under the current legislation. This matter has been a common theme heard in most of the public consultation processes. Furthermore, the report from the All-Party Committee on Mental Health and Addictions in 2017, along with the June 2017 Mental Health and Addictions Plan, reiterate this request. Our amendments will expand the applicability of the Act to boarding houses, along with living accommodations provided by a religious, charitable, or not-for-profit organization. The exception will be transient accommodations provided by religious, charitable, and not-for-profit groups. Another noteworthy change is regarding the length of time for notice of rent increases. As it exists in legislation, the notice period currently stands at 3 months. The new legislation will increase the notice period from 3 months to 6 months. This increase will give tenants additional time to seek out alternate accommodations if they cannot afford the increase, while landlords can also plan ahead to cover their costs. In situations of a group eviction, it will now be required that all tenants, including those in residential complexes, in addition to tenants of mobile home parks, be given 6 months' notice. Additionally, the length of time a landlord can keep a security deposit will decrease from 15 days to 10 days. If the rent payable to a landlord is in arrears for 15 days, current legislation says the landlord can give notice that the rental agreement is terminated, and the tenant is required to vacate the premises on a specified date, not less than 10 days after then notice is served. Our proposed changes will reduce the time it takes to evict a tenant in a month-to-month arrangement. By decreasing the time the tenant must be in arrears before the 10-day eviction notice is given to 5 days from 15 days. Another significant amendment is regarding penalties. As it currently stands, maximum fines for contravening the Residential Tenancies Act are $400. The new legislation will see increase in penalties from a maximum of $400 to a maximum of $10,000 for corporations and $3,000 for individuals. It is our hope that the increase will encourage compliance with the Act. These are a few of the major highlights of the amendments we will introduce today to the Residential Tenancies Act. There are a number of amendments concerning such matters as copies of orders, electronic documentation, receipts, accounts for security, deposits, fees for non-sufficient funds, and various housekeeping items. These changes are aimed at modernizing the legislation, recognizing the digital world we live in today. Many of our transactions are done electronically, and the legislation will now reflect this. Throughout the entire process, we have kept the fact that this Act is utilized by a large number of our residents at the forefront of our thinking. When you look at all the proposed amendments we are bringing to the House of Assembly today, I believe it is a balanced approach to addressing what we have heard from both landlords and tenants. We feel our approach will give good landlords and good tenants additional tools to protect their rights. We have also modernized the Act to help make the landlord-tenant relationship more efficient and effective. Enhanced consumer protection and the deterrence of bad business practices have been very important topics for our government. We also committed to better services and better outcomes for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. We are confident that the amendments to the Residential Tenancies Act we introduce this afternoon reinforces our commitments. Thank you very much.